for change in a society is usually persona non grata with those who have been the beneficiaries of the system.
Time for American Urban Radio Network's On the Record. We have a special edition on today. I'm excited because I have the pleasure of speaking with the incredible, the talented Miss Gia Peppers. How are you?
Hi. So good to actually see you. I'm like, let me make sure my camera's right because make sure we did this right. It's good to actually be here. And what a day for us to connect, Ebony. So, here we go.
Don't make me cross my eyes. You are such an amazing and renowned multimedia journalist, dynamic host of More Than That with Gia Peppers, and such an influential series this has become. And it's in its fourth season, very groundbreaking show. And I love the fact that it's talking about driving racial equity forward and amplifying Black voices and experiences.
Yeah.
How does it feel coming into this fourth season?
You know, this fourth season was touch and go for a minute there, to be completely and totally honest. We know this year has been politically with the words DEI, the phrasing of DEI now, you know, literally the spectrum that the spectrum shift we experienced from DEI being this positive thing that everybody should be a part of, when 2020 and 2021 was that was the thing that was moving our culture forward.
On the death of a Black man, because that's why we really...
Exactly. So, and that's honestly how the show started, but just to say, like, the spectrum shift, literally 2.5, 3 years later, where now DEI is a buzzword and scaring companies who used to fund Black projects and Black things from doing that. It was a touch and go situation. We honestly didn't know if we were going to get a season 4 because our show is literally a project that came about as an answer to all of the advertisers and all of the people in 2020 and 2021 that had those Black squares and were like, Black Lives Matter and Black deserve to be heard. You know, essentially Dentsu, which is one of the world's leading advertising agencies with partners such as, you know, I mean, P&G, Kroger, all the several different partners that we worked with, in response to all the murders, like you said, of George Floyd, of all the subsequent murders that followed, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud, we can literally spend 15 minutes naming people, but they decided out of their Dentsu good arm, Simi Bargava, who's one of the leads and co-executive producers of this show, and the person who made this show happen, she decided to utilize the Dentsu good impact arm of the organization and decided to really make this a space where all the advertisers that said they wanted to pull up could put their money where their mouth was. And so they wanted to really, really make sure that not only was this a space for conversation and needed conversation that was happening within the Black community, a space for that to live, but also a space where money could be funneled through the entire supply chain of Black creatives, Black entrepreneurs. So $16 million has been invested back into the Black community through this show. They were able to partner with Urban One, which is a Black-owned media company. Shout out to Kathy Hughes. And NABOB, which is the National Association of Black-owned broadcasters. So they were able to partner with them and really figure out a way to make sure that this is not just a podcast show, but a radio show. So we've been in over 104 markets since the seasons started in 2021. And I was brought on to be a host and a co-executive producer around that time when we launched. And so I've really loved the impact of the show. I've loved that we've been able to have reach. I've loved that we've, you know, gotten an NAACP Image Award nomination, because our show really is about having the conversations that, you know, some people know a lot about. Like, I remember my timeline, 2020, 2021, just so many conversations were popping up, from social justice, of course, but to climate change and environmental impact of how Black and brown communities are affected first. Then we had COVID, like every major thing of the last unprecedented 4 years that we've been living through, child. I just want precedented time to just come back, please. But They're not. So it is what it is. But I do think that we've been able to make great headway with the show and the topics we've discussed.
No, it's interesting. You talked about Black creatives being in this space and how it is important to foster these partnerships, because so many times we also see another narrative where you have Black creatives not really getting their due justice.
Talk about it.
Not getting the money that they should get, not getting the attention, but then we have culture vultures that come in and take from the culture, profit off the culture, and you see even more aggressively Black creators being like, I gotta build my own stuff, do my own thing. And it's hard because the money isn't always there. I mean, you're talking about DEI, you just having the conversation about venture capitalists, Black folk not really getting the money that they ever should have received, less than 2% of money. And so even when having this mindset, it's hard to build. But when you have partners, and you talked about Dentsu, you know, talked about Procter and Gamble, I know General Motors and Kroger getting behind something like this, it is powerful. And I think people lean on, I'm not going to let people keep saying that they're as ignorant as they really are. I think people understand what happens when we have partnerships like this, the power of it. I think there's just a force that just doesn't want it, period.
Oh,
and you talked about the power.
Yes.
Because studies have shown not only does my brand increase, but your profit margin increases as well. So it's not like you doing something to help me, you doing something to help you too. And I wish people would push that narrative, push the truth, the numbers, the data, instead of the other narrative. You talked about real life changes and things that you've seen. Talk about, you know, since you've been able to do this, some of the things that you've been able to witness as a result.
Sure. I mean, I love all the points you brought up, because I think what I love to see is especially in this time, brands like GM, Kroger, and P&G still say we're holding the line on everything we said in 2020 and 2021. We're not going to let
10 toes down. They are 10 toes down in it.
You know, get us off of our mission to make sure the world looks more equitable and inclusive, because they also have people in leadership in place that looks like us, or at least was an actual genuine ally and is not going to be moved by political talking heads that are not really doing anything but making people feel like the last 4 years didn't really matter. The work we did, the things we accomplished as a country, the conversations we had. You know that I look at news coverage now, and it's very, very real that like budgets have been slashed everywhere. As a journalist, you know, we came up in a time where news and journalism was necessary to the way we functioned. Like now, newsrooms, the budgets are slashed. Journalists can't even work. Like it's almost as if, I mean, we can see with the coverage of this past 3-4 months, there hasn't really been much balanced coverage of anything. So
no data, no investigation, no behind the,
it's rare. And so when I say, you know, it's even more amazing to watch partners, you know, go against the grain of what this time is asking them to believe, and still double down on their belief that these conversations need to happen. We have conversations from everything from the Black maternal mortality rate, and understanding how 3 Black doctors during 2020 and 2021 started the internal Institute for Racism and Health, because one of the doctors was having her baby and literally only got the other doctors to pay attention to her pain because she read her charts. And they were like, oh. So they gave us tips on how to really manage your birth plan, like the importance of a doula, the importance of talking to your, at that time it was COVID, it's only one person could come. I don't know if it's changed much now, but whoever's in the room with you, about like, if I lose consciousness, please say this is what we need, you know. So it's we have really important conversations like that. Even with you know, Master P, we had him on to talk about climate change. He's actually very passionate about it because he understands someone who lives it. Hurricane Katrina was not the only storm that Louisiana has faced, but he literally did every single time of helping New Orleans get back on its feet because we know he loves New Orleans and he's always down to like help, right? And so he talked about the impact of how Black and brown communities are usually the worst impacted, the least helped, and how this climate change is real. Like these storms are happening all the time. So we get to have a lot of amazing conversations, and so I'm hopeful that things will start changing. I hate what's happening with Arian Simone and the Fearless Fund. I'm just hoping that more things are changing. We got to fight. We just got to keep pushing. Like at the end of the day, especially with this announcement yesterday, as Black women,
lean all the way in, sis. All the.
No, I'm saying we're gonna have to learn how to prioritize rest in the midst of this time still, because we still need to be okay. But at the end of the day, we got to get to work. It's not business as usual.
But has it ever been? I think we've gone through moments where we felt like we could rest for a second.
Yeah.
In those moments where we felt like we could rest, don't forget there was always Project 2025. We're talking about it now, but it's always been in the works.
Always, 80s.
But what we saw happen with the courts was a part of that plan. So it never stopped. I think I was just on the call with Women Win, and you had over 40,000 Black women on there, and they ended up raising over $1 million just within a few hours. So we've always had to lean in. I believe self-care is so important, though, in the in-between. I recently at Essence did an interview with Layla Rashawn, and I said, do you know how important you watch the culture? And she said, I'm just realizing.
Yeah.
Because as much as we go back to Sunshine and everything else she has done, we've not learned to always take a break.
Yeah.
And so as you cover these incredible stories, as you spotlight these issues that need to be on the forefront, how do you find you in the middle?
Oh, wow. I'm really good at that. I don't play about my rest. I don't play about my days. I don't play about my walks. I don't play about, so More Than That is a podcast that I was hired to be a part of, and I'm so honored that I was chosen to be a part of that one. And then I also have Healed Girl Era podcast, which is my own podcast that I create.
I love it.
I'm trying to get partners for it, or maybe I need to have me a Zoom with Win with Black Women. We figure it out. But I think one of the biggest things is at the end of the day, what our contribution as millennials to the fabric of the Black existence in this country has been our understanding and our important efforts of changing the narrative of what it means to be mentally well. And I think that what I love to see is that we are coming at this absolutely standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. But now our ancestors have worked so hard, kept their heads down, fought, put their bodies on the line, their lives on the line for so many years to make sure this country lived up to the ideals that it says it's supposed to be representative of. And now I feel like we are yes, all that, we're going to work, we're going to do all that stuff, and we're going to rest, and we're going to pray, and we're going to get with each other and meditate, and we're going to go to therapy.
Come on.
Therapy, and talk about the anxiety. We're going to go and have these, these incredible organizations like Therapy for Black Girls and, all these different places where you can say, hey, I'm really not okay, and I need support, and I need to know that at the end of the day, that's okay to not be okay. And I think that is the millennial Black community's greatest contribution, is we don't shy away from the fact that sometimes we are not okay. And Healed Girl Era has been almost like my love letter to Black women, where I can share tools from therapists and, experts on joy and wellness, but also from our favorites like Kelly Rowland and Danielle Brooks and Sarah Jakes Roberts and, Dr. Anita, where we can have really deep conversations about wellness and what they learned in their eras of survival and thriving that can help us get through our own eras of healing and whatever else we're dealing with. And so I would say that is one of the spaces where I'm able to give and contribute to the culture in a way that I haven't before. But yeah, I'm really big on spending time with my family. I'm always I live in LA, but I am always on a flight, and usually half of that is going back to see my family in DC and Maryland, because I just love loving up on them and being around people that like really don't care what I do. Like, just love me for me. And I think that's so important as leaders, as people who are storytellers, to be around people who like, girl, if you don't work in two weeks and we don't care, I just want to how you like. I think
you ain't got 1,000 followers, I'm good. If you ain't popping or trending, I'm still. That's
the specialness of life. What we are seeing, right, is this dizzying reality that like change is so present in our day to day. Like we literally didn't know 48 hours ago what was about to happen, but we all woke up and we're all breathing and we're all okay. And I called my mama and she's good, and I called my dad and he's good. Like what I also realized is that, and my best friend and I were talking about this last night, is that the present moment is so important. And I hope that as a community and as individuals, we realize the importance of the present moment. Like this day, what will I do for myself, for my community, for my people? How am I loving on myself today? Like what, because we are in a day by day, over 100 days away from an election that's going to be changing the course of what we know as this space.
Right.
Literally day by day. That's what we're going to have to count. Did I do something for my community? Did I do something for myself? Did I move my body? Did I stretch? Am I stressed today? How's my family today? Like, it's really about to remind us that the present moment has nothing to do with all these distractions that are on the internet and all the distractions that are always there. There are more shows than ever made before, right? Because the streamers. So it's so easy to dissociate. But if we can remind ourselves, like, okay, maybe tomorrow I take a dissociation day, but on Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm gonna work. Then Thursday, Friday, I might need to dissociate.
It's true.
You know, like just really the day by day and the present moment, I think is gonna be really important in these next several weeks. But also just reminding us that like slower life, what really matters is like, am I good? Is my family good? Is my money, am I able to afford things? Am I able to build something for myself that I'm proud of? Like reminding ourselves that like, no offense, the blogs really don't matter. Like what's going on in the blogs don't matter. Like,
Cut it off. Shut it down. I'm like, if Jesus had to rest, so should you. I mean, shucks. And it was after like 7 days. I mean, yeah. Some of us haven't had a vacation and I don't know how long.
Hello.
I want to switch topics just for a second, because one thing I love about, more than that, is that the show is known for its collaborative efforts with Black showrunners, writers, and a majority of a BIPOC crew. And I remember coming up in the industry, seeing that the brown people in the newsroom, but it was like, oh, hey, I mean, you didn't see as many. And so when you did, you gravitated. But to be able to collaborate with writers, I can always tell, I'm sorry, I don't care if the cast is all Black. I can tell if the writers are white.
You can tell.
And I'm not going to run down the shows. But as soon as I see them, I'm like, oh, that was a Black cast.
Yeah.
I mean, the Black writers. I know because you speak in my language.
Right.
And there's just this interconnectedness and energy from people who come from some of the same experiences or came up out of that. How has that approach influenced the content and success of the series?
You know what? I think I have to give that to Simi Bargava, who is, again, that's the show creator and the woman from Dentsu Good that made sure this show happened. That's bigger than my pay grade. Amen. I was a part of that vision as a host that came on, and they, as season 2, 3, and 4 came, of course, I was able to consult and help bring in people, and I, was able to do that. But I have to give that to Simi, and then I have to give that to Urban One. So shout out to Matt and Matthew and all the teammates that we have over there that decided, it's not new for them, because Urban One is a Black-owned media conglomerate, and Interactive One and all I1 Digital, all the different Urban One TV, they all run with Black people in mind, Black creatives in mind. So when they got the task, they were really able to fill the newsroom, not our, and our creative schedule and our creative team with all Black people, because that's what they work with. So they were able to pull people from the projects that they hadn't worked with in a while, or I was able to recommend some showrunners that I know. And so that has been my favorite part of watching this grow every year, is because we don't really have to explain. Like when we get on our Zooms, because it started in the pandemic, we actually, everything is virtual. So we film on Riverside, record on Riverside. All of our meetings are on Google and Zoom. So it's not like, like we have to intentionally go meet each other and be like, come on, girls, we're not like this week, let's go meet. Because it is not, that's the thing that technology and the pandemic changed. But I will say, being able to get on a Zoom and say, I need a break, I need a minute, today's heavy, and not have to explain why is
right. Not have to explain. I know what that sign means. Yeah. I know what that look means. Right.
Especially in 2021, when we were out in the street and scared for our lives because there were so many pandemics happening. Like it just, that was a saving grace for all of us. We would be filming for like 2-3 hours and then stay on for another hour, just purging ourselves of like oh my God, I'm not okay. Today I freaked out. Today I literally just needed to walk for 2 hours because there's just so much happening in my body and mind. And I think that's amazing because my dad's a journalist too. He's been working in journalism since way before I was born, probably about 4 decades now. And he was at NPR first for 23 years, Press, CNN, all those different big newsrooms. He's on his way to retirement. But what I do love,
he's not gonna be able to sit down. He's not gonna be able to sit down.
When I was with him and able to really see the newsroom for what it was, what you were talking about, one of the only representations of people of color in the newsroom for a while there. It started to change. I saw it change, which was great, especially at NPR and different places. But at the end of the day, I remember my dad and I having really deep conversations about why it's important that we are in the newsroom, because you could say something like, hey, you can't call Trayvon Martin a thug because he didn't do anything but walk down the street. So let's make sure we call this what it is. The actual thug would have been Zimmerman. So if you are using thug, let's remove it. And my dad being that person that held the line, that sometimes, it was uncomfortable for people, but that's important when you are news, especially if you're covering news that represents this country. And so that's why I pray that throughout this next few months, we see some funding come up for journalism that isn't just like paid advertising. Because we've seen a lot of paid advertising lately and a lot of non-investigations of things that would usually be investigated. And it's very weird. Like I was cleaning out my phone today because my phone is full. I literally have photos from like 2016. And I saw coverage right from the New York Times and the New York Post that literally called our current RNC candidate a clown. And I'm like, where is this reporting? I miss this reporting. I just miss when people were not afraid. And right now we live in this time where they have normalized it. It is, and it's not normal. And so, I as a journalist, I understand that I'm supposed to be, I am bipartisan. I think everybody should vote for whoever you feel like. But I do miss when people had some type of reverence for the fact that these people have to run the country. And it's important that we understand who they are and what they stand for with some knowledge and education and research and not just opinions and fights.
Ooh, it's so much I want to say. I just bit my tongue all up.
I know, that's what
Black Box, I'm rocking because I'm like,
more than that is an important space because we get to have the conversations that not necessarily divide us, but just unite us under the fact that one of our
honest.
There's
a lack of integrity and honesty. There's a lack of, the
research.
There is, right. Just the basics. What should constitute as being sane and right? What is right is relative these days. Literally, we're battling over what the definition of truth is. And it doesn't have to be based in facts. It just can be based in how I'm feeling at the moment. And if I'm flippant, then my truth can be flippant. And I used to embrace the living in my truth thing. I'm sorry, I may go against the grain. Sometimes I'm like, babe, that ain't even truth.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's
we can't talk about facts anymore. Literally, I'm like, oh,
alternative. They call them alternative facts.
Yeah, we saw that. That's what quickest ways to break down a country is like to be like, what are facts? But that's a whole other conversation.
I know we are. But the good thing is with the show, more than that, right?
Yeah.
And I love even the title of it because it's moving us beyond
You
this
get it.
surface of where we like it's gotta be more than that. Like there's gotta be something more than that. So just a couple of more questions as you look ahead. What are the hopes and goals that you have for more than that? And are there any new projects or expansions in the works that you can share with us?
So, more than that, our hopes is that more than that is a model that this type of show works. When we did our initial like research on the listenership in 2022, GM pulled some numbers of how it functioned. 1 in 4 people had heard, Black people had heard of what more than that is. So it works because we're on the radio during our run. We're over 104 markets, and what I think is amazing is that Dentsu made a first of its kind show by asking their partners, like, do you care? If you care about this community that shops you and is one of your biggest consumer bases, how can you put this forward? And they were able to literally get more impact branding than they've ever had. Like people really Black people who listen to the show and people of color who listen to the show know that, like, oh, Kroger funded this conversation. Okay, I love me a Kroger, and I'm glad they care about what's going on.
Right. But that relationship is so important.
It's so important because we will spend our with people who care about us, and then we will not when we see like what it is. And so I think it's really important that other brands, other advertising firms, other places rebuild this model. This model works. Like, find people who want to bring these conversations to life and make it. We want a million more than that. And more than that, Latino is actually in the works. They are trying to develop that for Latin-speaking countries and the community that in our country, because our whole mission is to make sure that at the end of the day, like the title says, we understand that we are more than what society may place on us, more than what our environments may look like. We are more than what any limits that we might even have adopted about ourselves because of the messaging that we hear in our lifetimes. We are more than anything that any other person can think about us, and maybe sometimes more than what we even know about ourselves. And so
that's it right there.
So that this is a great model for people to continue to create, and we are also hopeful for a season 5 and a long season 5 that's able to amplify even more voices that represent just how much you can be and do and accomplish when you decide to be more than whatever limits that are placed on you.
Has the show More Than That shown you that you are more than that?
Absolutely. It's literally Ebony, it's like school. Like, honestly, it's more I've learned in class with a child. We go, okay. But that's another topic. But I learned so much. One of my favorite episodes that just aired was about Black farming. I am obsessed with farmers. I want to
You are right here. You're my Ellen twin.
Like, I love Black farmers. I think Black farmers are life-changing. But what I will absolutely say about this last story, one of the last stories we did, we had a farmer named D'Anthony James who's amazing, and he's carrying on his grandfather's legacy of taking over his farm. This farmland in the middle of the country, Indiana, I believe, has been in his family for 400 years. His great grandmother was able to get the farm. She was, I believe she was a slave who had a child with one of the at the time with the slave owner. Was actually a kind owner at the end of their when slavery started to be literally when it finally was over and slaves were emancipated. He gave land and to all of his slaves, and especially the women that I believe he had children with. Anyway, they've been able to keep that land in their family since that time. They've been able to sell goods and products and work with grocery stores, and they still have a farmer's market to this day. And I just think that's so powerful that they were able to
that.
Since that time, such a ugly legacy and an ugly start, but to make it something that feeds their community and goes to food deserts. It pops up with farmers markets of the only things that they are growing that have not been altered, like literally from the land to our table. It's such a beautiful story. And so, you know, in this country, Black farmers used to represent, I believe, 40%, like 20 years ago. Now I believe it's
like,
under,
I think it's closer to, because
like
I just did a story with, yeah, I think it's even less than that. I did a story with John Boyd, who's over Black Farmers Association.
Exactly.
Talking about Black land is one of my favorite topics because the thievery that is still happening. And when you include heirs property, and it is criminal.
Criminal.
It really is. And the fact, oh, I can't even, oh my God, like, I'm so glad. I didn't see that. I've seen some of your other ones. I didn't see that. I am definitely going to go back and look at that because that's close to my heart. And it's such an important topic. These are stories that we need to talk about that are full of substance, that are more than what the narrative that we talk about. So thank you, Gia, for all your work, for what you're doing, sis, like for how you are helping to move the culture along, still have fun doing it, for just everything that you've been doing. Big up to Dentsu and all the partners that have come and support, like Kroger and Procter and Gamble and people like that, because those relationships are important. When people are backing up, you have companies that are still staying in the fight. I'll just give you like the last 10, 15 seconds. What do you want to leave with the people? Where can people go to find all the information about you?
So morethan.show.com is where everything is up. If you're on socials, it's at More Than That Show. You can find everything. So this season we're now in is audio only, so that means it's just podcast and radio. But we did do a TV special with Revolt that came out last year. So if you want to see what the show looks like, there's a limited series on YouTube. You can check out all that information on morethan.show.com. It's airing right now. I believe we're in our season finale week. So just check out all the episodes. They're only 20 minutes. So you'll learn a lot in those 20 minutes and be able to do your own research about whatever brings that fire and passion to you. As I think we all understand, you activate where you are, where you have power, where you have influence, and also where you feel like it's something in your community that you see that you want to change. And so definitely check out the episodes. They're streaming now. And I also, you can follow me and all I'm up to at Gia Peppers as well, as we continue to be and do more than what society even is ready for, especially in these next several months.
That's a whole move right there. Peppers. More than that, sis. Thank you so much for coming on the record with me on today. And I'll just tell you this: when you're in the DMV area, because I feel like we're little soul sisters now, look me up.
It's okay. Period. I'm gonna do that.